Building amazing experiences that engage and delight your customers is easy with Commio. Our smart, reliable voice and messaging solutions are easy to implement and scale with you so you can deliver more calls and texts, be more competitive, and save money. With Commio, you get peace of mind and happier customers. Find out why thousands of software platforms and enterprises trust Commio with their communications. Get a demo today.
We need to find a partner that, understands that in healthcare, any downtime is absolutely, we can't do that. we have to have as much uptime as possible. So, uptime, customer service, those were things that were very critical for us.
Well, greetings and welcome to another industry briefing from Commio. I love doing these every single month. There's always a lot to talk about, but there's an occasional time where I look back at, things that are going on in the industry and realize that it's a really good time to take a step back and think like somebody newly entering this marketplace looking for a new provider for either voice or messaging. And at Commio, obviously, we talk with dozens or even hundreds of customers and potential customers every single month. And it got us thinking that we're hearing different things in the marketplace these days than we did even 6 or even 9 months ago as people are looking for a new fit. For somebody like Commio, for instance, who provides voice and messaging services, because the landscapes of both of those channels has changed dramatically during that time period. So I thought I'd start by bringing in Eric Leon, our VP of Sales. Eric, welcome in.
Hey, Tim.
Yeah, and I wanted to start first thing with, if somebody's looking for, we hear a lot of people looking for sort of a backup carrier, a primary carrier, but the voice channel continues to be one of the paramount ways for folks to communicate, to provide communication services to their employees, but even more so serving their customers. So if somebody's entering the marketplace today, I think the order stack in terms of importance has changed a little bit. So I'd love to get your take on what should somebody be looking for when it comes to shopping for a voice provider today in 2023.
Yeah, I think, there's been, the landscape is ever changing. Regulatory rules, offerings, there's new providers into the market. It's exciting, it's terrifying. There's so many different things happening at the same time. I think it can be a lot. And I think probably one of the first things I would say to somebody who's just in general looking into the marketplace is there's a lot of great new tools out there. There's a lot of new ways to do things. I wouldn't get too distracted by certain tools or front end, features and things like that. I think at the end of the day, the way I always like to think about it when building out, the highest quality, most redundant network is, I just like to think about it from the perspective of, at the end of the day, when it comes to voice, calls still just need to get completed over 10,000 different carrier networks, right? Mm-hmm. This is a web. It's not easy. There's plenty that can go wrong, whether it's receiving a phone call or whether it's making a phone call. So I think, I'll keep this a little bit more towards just like the core table stakes when it comes to building out a strong, redundant network. And one of the things I always think of when you're talking to a partner, I think a lot of people overlook is understand who you're getting in bed with. What type of network are they running? Are they an aggregator of services? Are they just, buying something for $1 and selling it for $2? Or do they actually directly control the network? And I'm partial to the latter. I think when a provider of voice services actually has control over the network, they have the direct connections to these 10,000, operators. I think it just gives them a whole slew of capabilities that an aggregator doesn't have. They just have more control of the network. They can monitor things from a capacity standpoint. It's just much easier to manage when you are the network versus when you're reselling the network. So, I think of, not to give us a plug here right out of the gate, but, I think the fact that Commio is a CLEC, that we own our own numbers, that we provide our own network, that we have a massive footprint, it just brings a lot more value to our partners. Coverage. I think when we think of coverage, we think of those maps for cell phones and things like that. But a lot of vendors can come in with really great pricing. I mean, this could be just like bare bottom pricing, but it's only bare bottom pricing when it comes to a very small footprint that they cover, and everything outside of that footprint can be like quadruple the price of what it is otherwise. So I encourage you to sort of talk to your vendor and have them actually look over, like take your phone numbers, for example, have them run all your phone numbers, get an understanding of what numbers are going to be, like they'll use terms like on net or tier 0 and things like this. That's a big thing that we work on with our partners is we do full assessments of like, hey, what's working with what you have now? Where do we bring value? Is our comprehensive footprint really going to enhance what you're doing? And oftentimes what we find is people don't even realize how many numbers that they're procuring through their provider that aren't even on their provider's network. They're just off network with a third party. And again, in that case, they have less control because they're becoming an aggregator of those types of services. Scalability is another one. When you're working with a partner, I think really getting an understanding of where you're going to be 12, 24 months, 10 years down the road. A lot of times we talk to people who are migrating off of platforms because they've simply outgrown them.
Mm-hmm.
Is this person really going to be able to support X number of live calls or X number of calls per second? A lot of people start out with what they consider to be maybe a market leader, and they're quickly surprised that market leader can't necessarily keep up with the type of way that their calling is going to happen. It's just too excessive to what they're used to. I think it's just something you should talk about, and probably the easiest way to talk about that with them is give them a description of what you're doing, get a firm understanding if they can support that. Ask them for examples of partners that they have today that are doing those types of capacities, and how they're accomplishing those goals for those partners. Response times. This is probably one of the biggest things for somebody to migrate from somebody, but not a conversation people often have when they're first connecting into providers. A lot of providers out there are going to, with a lot of confidence, tell you things like, oh, our support, we'll get back to you within 24 hours, or we'll get back to you within 2 hours. But I think as those of us who service end user customers understand, even 2 minutes to get a problem solved is 2 minutes far too long. And I think this is part of a bigger conversation you need to have with them. You need to understand a couple things. One is, what type of services can you expect? So this could come in the form of response times, escalation reports. A lot of times this comes under a mask of an SLA, a service level agreement. And sometimes they'll even offer you money back, if they're down for a certain amount of time. Be very weary of these types of things. Any network that's sort of planning for failure is not a good thing. I encourage people to sort of talk to their partner from like, help me understand how your technology is going to prevent problems from happening, because it doesn't matter if I get money back from you. It doesn't matter if you eventually get back to the problem. What matters to me is I have the potential of losing a customer unless they perceive me as a quality brand with great uptime. So help me understand how your technology is going to help it. I'll give us another shameless plug, on this thing. One of the big things that Commio focuses on that is really a hidden value until people start really leveraging it is having a network that has self-healing tools that prevents you from ever having problems in the first place. Or tools that when you do have a problem, we reduce that time down to seconds or minutes, not hours or days. And again, I would encourage people to sort of probe us and probe other partners and say like, okay, but show me how you can do this. And you should come away satisfied that that's something that's going to have a positive impact on your brand when it comes to troubleshooting, issues for your partners. Which kind of, I guess, dovetails a little bit into redundancy in general. A lot of times the network is masked, so you don't really know. You're dealing with a brand, but you don't know who their partners might be on their back end. They won't necessarily share with you whether they're an aggregator or things like that. So again, this is an area where you really want to understand the technology that's going to assist you. Like if you were to send them a call or receive a call, what would be things that might impede that from happening? What type of technology do you deploy? Now this is really turning into a salesy thing, but this is where Commio really sort of excels. We have a fully transparent network. So when you come onto our platform, you actually see all the connections to each destination and how the system will automatically self-heal between those. You get to set up the rules associated with that. again, you don't have to come up with that on your own. We actually consult and configure that for you. And then we have some industry leading technology where, whereas a lot of people will tell you, well, this product here, just inherently has no redundancy built into it. Don't take that as an answer. Talk to different partners. We're one of a few who offer redundancy on products that everybody else in the marketplace says, redundancy, you can't do redundancy on this. We show you how our technology can and challenge those sort of norms. Yep. I know I'm going long, Tim, but I get passionate about this. And I think, when we talk about, do you want me to talk a little bit about the text messaging side as well?
Yeah, I was going to say the summary of voice was really good. I think messaging is something new to a lot of folks that come to this content. So I'd love to know, as they're looking for a text provider or a network to get those messages delivered, what should they be thinking about?
Yeah. It has a lot of similar aspects to voice, in the sense of like really understanding who you're getting in bed with, right? When it comes to messaging, there's only a handful that are actually, connected to, they call them DCAs, they're carrier aggregators and things like that. But there's only a handful that connect to it. Yes, it coincides with the biggest in the business. Commio is like one of those. And then there's aggregators and resellers. So think about it. When you have a challenge with the text messaging, whether it's deliverability or something like that, what you don't want to do is have to deal with somebody who then has to go open up a support ticket themselves with somebody else. Right. You really want to be working with a partner that has more control, that's actually talking to the people that are building out compliance and things like that. It just offers you way more visibility, and just way more capability. Now, I say way more visibility because, like us, we really take on a transparent model where we're sharing all the information, we're telling exactly what's happening, what's occurring. I can understand that not everybody does that. Maybe they don't have the time or the resources to have that level or that type of relationship with a customer. So I would just ask them, about their network, who they're connected to. I'd ask them, what does that mean if we were to run into any challenges, things like that. Another thing I think that's important is the landscape on SMS. Scott's going to talk more about this, but it is like ever changing. You want to work with a partner. What kind of consultative services are they offering? Are they charging you for these, services? At Commio, we're all about, the partner being successful. And so provide a lot of, consultative services around understanding why might a brand not be able to get approved? Like these are good, healthy brands, and yet people are having failures. We've heard of carriers who have like 50% success rate in getting campaigns approved. And what we attribute that to is they're not communicating with their partner and saying, here's what's happening. And it's almost monthly. Like, here's what's new. Here's what they've, they're now using these types of things. Like they're now requiring this. They weren't looking at that before. Now they are looking at that. I wish this was as straightforward as have a great brand and you're just going to be guaranteed to get registered. There's more to it, right? And so we need to help those with responsible brands, get their campaigns registered and set up.
Yep.
Regulatory compliance. Scott is an ace at this. I mean, I think everybody should spend an hour with him. But regulatory compliance is incredibly important. And again, it ties into that sort of consultative services. But at the end of the day, all these things line up to working with a partner who's working direct with the sources, who's going to get you that high deliverability rate, right? Which gets you the right kind of ROI to return it. If you don't understand your ROI, talk to your vendor about it. They can talk to you about how to calculate your return on investment when it comes to sending out and receiving text messages.
Yeah. And also voice. So, if you're at all interested in getting a report listed, you send us your data. We can create that report for you, as well as
That's
consult.
Exactly right.
Yeah, consult on your unique use case and see if there's a fit. Well, Eric, that's great. You teamed me up perfectly for Scott. I'm going to get him in here right now to talk about all things compliance. So appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy, and we'll go ahead.
No problem. And give us a ring if you just want to talk it through. You don't have to sign up for the services. We're happy to talk to anybody. We're trying to lead the way to better adoption in the industry.
Absolutely. Commio.com. Click on that, get a demo. You can get Eric, you can get our other experts, you can get Andy, our sales engineer.
Sure.
We just want to talk to you. What's your use case? What are you trying to solve for? And like you mentioned, consultative services. No extra charge. That's what it's all about on voice and messaging. Right. All right, Eric. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Going to go ahead and grab Scott. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
Sounds good.
you can only say, hey, it's our carrier so many times before people either A, think you're incompetent, or B, ask why are we still with them. Really, it was a need to protect our brand, and also a need selfishly to protect, my weekends and my time outside of work.
In the past, when you were looking for a provider, we were talking mostly about voice, but in 2023, there's an equal communication channel to voice, and that is text messaging, which is why I wanted to bring Scott Navratil in. He's our VP in charge of customer growth, to talk about messaging. Scott, I'd love to kind of go through our list of top 7 or 8 things that you want to look for on the messaging side. And the first thing I think it's important for us to talk about in this year in particular, with all the changes coming down the pike, is values. In other words, does your values, do they match up with the provider's values? And I think that comes down to integrity, and that is really knowing your customer. They need to know you, and you need to know them, right?
Right. Absolutely. Yep. It's a relationship. And I think that's, how we've built our success is having long-term relationships. And most of the time those relationships actually evolve into friendships, so, loyalty and, having, basically a friend is almost like having a friend in the messaging business kind of thing. I was thinking of Tom Shane, who's a local jewelry retailer. Is like, hey, now you have a friend in the diamond business, right? So now you have a friend in the voice and messaging business.
Right. For sure. And I think that comes down to, we all know that, the FCC and the campaign registry in particular are really asking folks who are doing this type of traffic to, to register it, to whitelist it, do all the things so that both the provider and the customer, again, they have to know each other, and there has to be some sort of a form of trace back, right? So that we can sort of make sure that we're not sort of gumming up the works of the world out there with junk traffic that is not conforming to the latest rules, right?
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, the campaign registry is a traceback platform. It's very similar to StirShaken. The campaign registry basically gives the carriers, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, et cetera, visibility to who the perceived sender is of the text message. That's what they want, because if that text message is going out and it ends up being some kind of a phishing or, social security fraud or something, the carriers want to be able to trace it back to the person who sent it. And that's really that's the purpose of the registry, is to give them that visibility, and then they'll take action after that.
Yeah. And I think if we could just put a bow on all this, if we're talking about compliance, which seems to be what we're talking about a lot these days, is if you don't know these acronyms, you need to get familiar with them really quick, which is TCPA, CTIA, the Carrier Code of Conduct Policies. And again, when you have a friend in the messaging business like Commio, we can make sure that you're in alignment with all of those, and to make sure that you get your messages out at the highest possible velocity and quantity on a daily basis, and also that we can know you and make sure that we're all doing all the right things.
Yep. I definitely know that the really important part in the FCC, and this is an expectation not only from the FCC, but also the mobile carriers, as you mentioned, is know your customer. And I think it's important to do deep vetting, because that, once you basically bring on a new customer and you start, after you finish the onboarding and you start running, submitting campaigns and submitting requests for whitelisting on your toll-free numbers, applying for short codes, et cetera, the carriers are going to look into your customer. They're looking, are they a US-based company? Does their FEIN match the brand that they're trying to submit? They will go to your customers' websites. They will call their phone numbers. They will do it. They will really basically go through it with a fine-tooth comb, looking for anything that looks and smells like a spammer, a fraudster, phishing, et cetera. So it's really important that anybody who's going to be doing anything in the messaging and voice space spends that time to really get to know their customer, know who they are, know where they're from, what are their intentions, right? What are they trying to achieve?
Yeah, and I think it's important to say too out loud, Scott, that nowadays, again, in 2023, the rules have changed. The penalties are sky high. You're lucky if you get one strike, and if you're really lucky, you might get two before you're not going to be able to send traffic. You're going to have to find another provider. So the sooner you do all those things that you just said, the better.
Yeah, and that's getting into the second part, right, which was compliance. That's a real critical component right now, because we're getting to the point, like on 10DLC, where you're only going to be able to send verified traffic. We're already there with toll free. We're already there with short code. And so, if you're onboarding customers that have traffic that won't get approved, you're spending time and money right? Or you're wasting time and money, because you need to have customers that can have verifiable traffic, that can go through the registration process, that can be vetted, and actually can send successful traffic. That's real critical. But having, a partner who understands all the, all the rules and all the regulations and also best practices. I mean, it's, thing that we're seeing now, even people who have campaigns who've gone through the process, they've got campaigns approved and they're running traffic, they're still having delivery issues. So a lot of that has to do, then it kind of falls back to the actual content, the message structure, the tone of the message. Does it look and smell like spam? And I think that's one of the things that we've been doing over here, right? Is really kind of making sure our customers understand that those are real things. Like, hey, we get that all the time, right? Hey, my campaign's registered and I went through all the processes, but I'm not getting any deliverability. I'm getting blocked. Why? Right. Well, we can go in and look at that message, say, this is exactly why you're getting blocked. Right. Yep. And so you need to fix this, this, and this, and that should improve.
That's right. And when you have a friend like Commio in the business too, we're going to use our tools to make sure that anybody who's under you, which, we know that we want you to be doing deep vetting of your sub customers as well. But we're going to filter for keywords. We're going to alert you when those campaign registries fail for whatever reason, and really coach you through that process, because it takes a sort of one-on-one, sort of a hand-holding approach, white glove, to make sure that the registrations work, the whitelisting works, and then vetting, as you said, the message content to make sure that deliverability is as high as it can be.
Yep.
We also, by the way, one thing to look for too is making sure that whoever you work with has a great API set, as well as a platform to make it easy to register those brands and campaigns, to do the whitelisting, to buy those phone numbers. Something that we do really well. And also, at the end of the day too, we're connected, all the way through, from sender to provider to DCAs to carriers. I mean, we like a lot of providers sort of, we're sort of that connective tissue that can help you, get connected. And I think let's leave it with one last thing, Scott, I'd love to talk about is what we're doing right now is you want to work with a provider that's openly communicating, because things are changing almost on a daily basis these days, and making sure that you're going to webinars, you're watching videos like this, that they're providing those things, as well as doing the white glove one-on-one approach, right? That's so important. That communication is key.
Oh, it's critical. And I think, as you mentioned, and it changes daily, and it seems like, at least for the foreseeable future, it's not going to get better. And so if you don't have a partner, a friend in this business that really understands, we're keeping an eye on it. We have people that are dedicated to compliance, internal and external, right? We are going to the shows. We're going to the compliance shows, the regulatory shows. We're doing everything that we can to make sure that we're on top of these changes. And that takes a lot of time and effort. And so, for someone who's, either been in the business a while or someone who wants to get into it, you need that, right? It's like having that dedicated employee on your staff that's paying attention to everything that's going on and can guide you in the right direction to take.
Yeah. And we want to sort of end this, Scott, by saying that integrity really does matter. And as a provider and sort of that connective tissue in this industry, we want to do the right things. We want to do the right things by you. We want to make sure that we can, sort of enable the traceback pieces. But at the end of the day, we've had to part way with some customers because, if they're not properly vetting their traffic and following the rules, we can endanger our network. So, it's really behooves all of us to be playing on the same team here and following all the right rules so that we can all get our traffic delivered.
We all have to be good citizens. We have to self-police. And I think we're seeing more of that now. That's in the last 6 months, and I've seen in several years in voice and messaging, which is good. And so, you're absolutely spot on. I mean, it's super important, and it's a hard decision to make. And we've had to exit some very large customers because their traffic was getting, it was being flagged, and the carriers were losing their tolerance of the type of traffic and content they were sending. And so I think as a business, whether it's voice or messaging, you have to be willing to make those tough decisions, even if it's a lot of revenue. But it's so critical, because if you don't, like you said, Tim, if it gets flagged multiple times, you're going to get blacklisted. And if you're blacklisted by a carrier, you're not going to be able to send on anybody. And then you're pretty much, you're out of the voice and messaging business.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you get to a certain size, I think you'd agree, Scott, we talked about this in some of our other pieces together. Like, you really do need to hire almost compliance folks just to be vetting your messages, vetting your brands, vetting your campaigns, watching the message flow. as well as investing in the tools, to make sure that the traffic is solid. And the days of just making this an afterthought are long behind us. So if you're of any appreciable size, or your application is, and you're adding more to it, you're going to have to make those investments in 2023 and beyond.
Whether it's train somebody internally, repurpose them, that if they're an existing employee. If that's not an option, hire a third-party consultant. There's a lot of TCPA and compliance law firms out there. There's also other people that just do standard consulting. They've been in the business a while, and they can provide some guidance on what to do, what not to do. But not to do something is probably a big mistake in this day and age.
Yeah, I think we all want to be in this industry, do the things that we do as long as possible, and not addressing it as a recipe for being shut down and losing that part or an entire business, which we don't want. So you've got a friend in messaging at Commio. We'd love to take a look at your use case, look at what you're trying to send, your brands, or, we can walk through everything with you, make sure you're in compliance, and make sure you get the highest possible deliverability and follow those rules. We'd love to work with you on that. So Scott, thanks for all those tips.
Really appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Cool. Thanks.
Bye. I had a report from a doctor that one of the hospitals that was calling one of the numbers that we have with Commio was not connecting. So I went on the portal, I looked it up, saw that there was something upstream, really couldn't quite figure out what it was on my own. It didn't look, normal to me. It was a Saturday morning and called in, got an engineer, dove in. He identified that upstream carrier, and we had that carrier turned off. We were back up and running, and that hospital confirmed that they could reach him. Those are the kind of things that that's the level of service that we need and expect.
Well, as you're out there shopping for a great provider for your voice or your messaging needs, one of the sort of more often overlooked things is support. And that's why I really wanted to bring in Katie, our Director of Customer Success here at Commio, to talk about that. Katie, you've been in the business now over a decade, right?
That's right.
It's time. It goes by. Yeah, I know.
It does.
I haven't been in quite as long as you, but I'd like to start with that, Katie, which is, all right, we know a lot of people out there that are watching this. Either they have a current carrier, they're shopping for one in 2023. Kind of in general, what's sort of the level set of what they can expect when they sign up with a provider these days? What's kind of the base level of support out there?
Yeah. It really varies carrier to carrier. A good carrier, as far as support goes, will help you with account setup when you first come on board. They'll walk you through getting things configured, making sure everything's working, and they'll do that in a really timely and efficient manner to help you get your traffic up and running right away. Once you're in production, what you're looking for in a carrier is going to be a support team that is, locally based, that has not only emails or ticketing systems, but that you can also reach on the phone. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where a lot of people are lacking, or carriers are lacking, is, you may put a ticket in and you're just waiting around, hoping you get a response that day or within 24 hours, and there's no way to get those guys on the phone. The ideal scenario would be, I send in a ticket, I expect a response within 15 minutes. And then if I have, a more in-depth question, or I need to talk something through, I can call someone, whether it's a NOC team member on the more technical side, or if it's a customer success team member and I need help with a password reset, or how do I download my invoice, whatever that may be. And I know there's a lot of frustration in the industry around just not having the right person to contact. And if they do know where to go, there's a lack of response there.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think your rosy scenario of how things should be, unfortunately, is not really the case in most places, unfortunately, because you and I both were reading recently that, Twilio, one of the powerhouses out there, recently, not only do they have a big workforce reduction on the customer success side, the support side, but they've also tiered their support. So good luck if you're a small sort of growing enterprise and trying to get help with something.
Yeah, that's going to be near impossible in that scenario.
Yeah. Right, which they already kind of had a bad rap, which I don't want to, cast too much shade on Twilio, because to be honest, a lot of our customers, use Twilio, to create their applications. But when they grow to a certain size, because of the lack of support, they'll come over to somebody like Commio, who honestly has all the things you said, which starts with US-based support, responsive, to the support tickets when they do come in. And oh, by the way, give you the tools that you can log in and use without having to file a support. That's the ideal scenario, right? You can take that carrier out of route yourself, which I think some people out there don't even know exists, that they could do that, right? They don't even know.
Right. I mean, that's one of the biggest, anytime we're on a demo or, a kickoff call with a potential new customer, they're shocked that they can see the carriers and then that they can actually make and control the changes there.
Yeah. I think because a lot of folks are using a platform like Twilio, where there's just literally an API that says, make this phone call to this phone number, and it goes into a black box. And when there's trouble, there's really nothing they can do. There's no visibility. Right. So that's right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, great. Well, I guess I'd have to say that, if we had to give some tips to people out there that were shopping, they may have one carrier and like a backup carrier. But support is an important component of choosing a good provider, and know that in 2023, there are providers like Commio who can give you that responsive support, give you access to somebody like Katie and her team. And oh, by the way, everybody who comes on board with us not only gets a named account manager, you'll know that person's name. You'll be able to meet with them, do quarterly reviews, but also has access to our sales engineering team, so that when you're doing setup or you're coming up against a problem, you have somebody to talk to. So kind of sets us apart. So
it really does. And that's one of my favorite parts of the job, is getting to have those conversations with new customers, hearing them be excited about the tools that we offer, and the dashboards and reporting and whatnot, and getting people up and running. I mean, we've really got it down to a science now, as far as which products are you using. Okay, here's how we can help you with this. We have our APIs, which are super easy to get up and running. And it's exciting to see a customer go through that quick transition and actually start producing production traffic.
Yep. And Katie, I think I'll leave it here, which, I've been with the company long enough now, going through my 5th year, and I've seen how we treat new customers and existing customers evolve over time, even in that time period. And what I love is that when somebody comes on board, there's already questions about, it looks like it's going to be a good fit. The cost savings is nice. The tools look great, but how is this really going to work? And we wrap them in a hug of support, right? Like we give them a team, right? We're like, hey, we're going to make you successful. And we don't let go of them until things are running, the code is working, the traffic is running, everybody's happy. Right. And then it becomes you get the idea. And that's what, by the way, that's why I love working here too, because I want to work for a company that invests in support, and we've got to make sure we're providing not only a good product, but the setup and support is so critical. So I think I've said enough. Katie, thank you for your time. If you're picking a new provider or you want to upgrade, those are the things you want to be looking for, and Commio could be a good choice for you. So great.
Exactly. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Katie.
You can go from everything's fine to, the sky is falling in 3 seconds. And the tools that Commio has allow me to be able to take a breath. Okay, let's figure out what's actually happening. I can open a ticket and continue working on the issue because of the tools that you guys have given me that aren't traditional from the carrier sense. Fix my issue in minutes. And if it's something more in depth to that, I can get someone on the phone by calling a number, someone that speaks English, someone that is in a similar time zone to me. Even when it's not regular business hours for an East Coast based company like Commio, I can still get someone on the phone when we're open. And even if you don't have someone that is a telephony guy like me, the support team has been very knowledgeable, very helpful.
Building amazing experiences that engage and delight your customers is easy with Commio. Our smart, reliable voice and messaging solutions are easy to implement and scale with you, so you can deliver more calls and texts, be more competitive, and save money. With Commio, you get peace of mind and happier customers. Find out why thousands of software platforms and enterprises trust Commio with their communications. Get a demo today.